You mess with a bull, you get the horns. You mess with a bear, you get the claws. You mess with a guy with a Lewis gun, you're gonna get a whole lot of bullets. The Lewis gun was invented by US Army Colonel Isaac Newton Lewis in 1911, based on the initial works by Samuel McLean. Despite its origins, the Lewis gun was never initially adopted by the US military, most likely because of the political differences between Lewis and General William Kosher, the chief of the Ordnance Department. Lewis became frustrated with trying to persuade the US Army to adopt his design, so as he said, he was slapped by the rejection of ignorant hacks and he retired from the military and the army. He left the United States in 1913 and went to Belgium, where he established the Arms Automatic Lewis Company of Liège to facilitate commercial production of the gun. Lewis had been working closely with British arms manufacturer the Birmingham Small Arms Company Limited, or the BSA, in effort to overcome some of the production difficulties of the weapon. The Belgians brought a small number of Lewises in 1913, using the AUT 303 British round, and in 1914, BSA purchased a license to manufacture the Lewis machine gun in England, which resulted in Lewis receiving a significant royalty payment and becoming very wealthy indeed. Lewis and his factory moved to England before 1914 away from possible seizure in the event of German invasion. They were not in general issue to the Belgian army, and they were only used in a few foyers by motor vehicles south of Antwerp against the flank of the invading German army. The onset of the First World War increased demand for the Lewis gun, and the BSA began production under the designation Model 1914. The design was officially approved for service on the 15th of October 1915 under the designation Gun Lewis AUT 303 caliber. No Lewis guns were ever produced in Belgium during all manufacture was carried out by the BSA in England and the Savage Arms Company in the US. The major difference between the two designs was that the BSA's weapon was chambered in the 303 British ammunition, while the Savage gun was chambered in the 30-06, the US ammunition, which necessitated some differences in the magazine, the feed mechanism, the bolt, the barrel, the extractors, and the gas operating system. Savage did make the Lewis gun in 303 British caliber though. The Model 1916 and the Model 1917 were exported to Canada and the United Kingdom, and a few were supplied to the US military. Oh, irony indeed, particularly in the Navy though. The Savage Model 1917 was generally produced in the 30-06 caliber for the US Marines and US military. The number of these guns were supplied to the UK under Lend-Lease during the Second World War as well, but this is the first one. The first users of the Lewis gun in the war was Belgium, in August to September 1914, when a small number of Lewis guns were available and fitted for a handful of touring and armoured cars and used in a few sorties against the German patrols and troop columns. As a consequence, the Germans are supposed to have nicknamed the Lewis gun the Belgian Rattlesnake. Great Britain officially adopts the Lewis gun in the AUT 303 British caliber for land, aircraft and of course sea use in October 1915. With the weapon beginning to be generally issued to the British Army's infantry battalions on the Western Front in early 1916 as a replacement for the heavier and less mobile Vickers machine gun. The Vickers then being withdrawn from infantry use by a specialist machine gun company, and then the US Navy and US Marine Corps followed in early 1917 adopting the M1917 Lewis, produced by the Savage Arms Company, basically made the Vickers irrelevant. The US Army never officially adopted the weapon for infantry use, and even went as far as to take Lewis guns away from US Marines arriving in France, and replaced them with a cheap, shoddy, and extremely unsatisfactory Chauchat LMG or SARG for the US Marines. A practice believed to be related to the General Kosher's dislike for Lewis and his gun. The US Army eventually adopted the Browning automatic rifle, the BAR, in 1917, although it was in September 1918 before any of these new guns could actually reach the front. The US Navy and the US Marine Corps continued to use the 30-06 caliber Lewis gun until the early parts of World War II. The Russian Empire purchased 10,000 Lewis guns in 1917 from the British government and ordered another 10,000 from Savage Arms Company in the US. The US government was unwilling to supply the Tsarist Russian government with the guns, and some even doubted that they even came and were actually delivered, although records indicate that 5,982 Savage weapons were delivered to Russia on the 31st of March 1917. The Lewis guns supplied by Britain were dispatched to Russia in May 1917, but it is not known for certain whether these were Savage made or being transshipped through the UK or even their own production line in the UK itself. The British Mark V tank used the Lewis gun, replacing the Vickers and Hotchkiss used in earlier tanks. The Lewis gun was chosen for its relatively compact magazines, but as soon as improvements were made to the Hotchkiss magazine belt, The Lewis gun was replaced by them in later tanks and models. The Germans also used and captured Lewis guns in both world wars and included instructions in their operation and care as part of their machine gun crew training. Despite costing more than a Vickers gun to manufacture, the cost of a Lewis gun in 1915 was about £165 and the Vickers cost about £100 flat. The Lewis machine gun was in high demand with all British military during the First World War. The Lewis had the advantage of being about 80% faster to build than the Vickers gun and was a lot more portable. Accordingly, the British government placed an order for 3,052 guns between August 1914 and June 1915. By the end of the war, over 50,000 Lewis guns had been produced in the US and the UK, and they were nearly ubiquitous on the Western Front, outnumbering the Vickers of a ratio by 3 to 1. The German FG-42 paratroopers rifle would then use the German gas assembly and the gas design, which would then be incorporated into the M60 machine gun, and the M92 machine gun, the standard handheld machine gun used by the Imperial Japanese Navy, was basically a copy of the Lewis gun with a bigger magazine. That's the story of the Lewis gun, the Rattlesnake, the gun that won the Western Front. You can't Lewis with this gun. Terrible puns. Alright, we have not done this for a while because we did a lot of experimental guns so far. So let's just go down the countries that used them. So, Australia, Belgium, Canada, Chile, the Republic of China, Colombia, Czechoslovakia during the interwar years and World War II, Estonia during their fight for independence with the Baltics, Finland, France, Western Front, Democratic Republic of Georgia, mostly the People's Guard and some army units in 1918 to 1921 before being absorbed into a socialist state, German Empire, which found it to be lighter than the machine Gewehr or 815, Nazi Germany, Honduras, Ireland during the Troubles and the Irish Independence War, the Irish Civil War, sorry. Israel during their state of rebuilding in 1848, they needed all the weapons they could get. Italy during both world wars, captured of course. Empire of Japan and their copy. Latvia, Standard MG during the Latvian War of Independence and interwar period. Malaya, Mexico, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Newfoundland before being incorporated into Canada itself. Nicaragua, Norway during World War II as, you know, some, saboteurs and stuff like that in Norway, especially in France as well. A lot of saboteur countries during World War II would have used British armed supplies. The Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Russian Empire, even the Soviet Union for some time, and even LELS, of course. Sri Lanka, which is Creole, which is an island off of India, which the British laid claim to as well. Tibet, of course, United Kingdom and the British Empire. The United States from World War I and even up to World War II, the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, and finally Thailand. So you don't mess with the rattlesnake, or you get the venom, or in this case, the bullets. And remember, you can't Lewis with this gun. Terrible puns, good times, good videos. Hope you learned something, and hiss, because that's what snakes do, so that's the joke, because it's the rattlesnake. Anyway, learn something. Enjoy.